Hi there everybody, this is a Webbtunes piano lesson. My name is Rich and the song that we're going to have a look at today is Paradise by Coldplay. So in the times that we're in at the moment where we can't do face-to-face lessons, I'm trying this as an alternative where I teach the lesson to the camera, upload it to YouTube, and then my students can watch it and they can request certain songs that they want to see covered. The way that I'm going to try and talk about this song is less about exact keys and notes that are being played on the recording and more about just the in-depth analysis of how the chords work, like how they're moving from one chord to another, how to understand the underlying theory. And we're just going to kind of take it step by step and sort of more of an analysis point of view than a strictly I want to play exactly what Chris Martin played on the recording kind of thing. So that's just a little bit of a disclaimer there. Okay, so quick selfless plug. Please press all the buttons down there for liking and subscribing to the channel. Leave a comment. It helps the algorithm to kind of like pick up my channel and help me grow. So I'd really appreciate that. So please do that if you can. And let's dive into the subject. So the song Paradise by Coldplay. Let me first start by telling you that the key is F major. So we are in F when we're playing this song. You can play it in any other key, but the key that this song is in on the recording is in F. So let's just quickly go through what chords are available to you if you're staying in the key of F. Okay, so let's look at the scale. F, G, A, B flat, C, D, E. And then you're back to your F at the beginning, which is your root. Okay, so that creates 7 different chords just from being that way. Now watch out for this B flat. I'm going to be using it in chords, and watch how I'm not going to hit this note here, which is the B natural. So the first chord, F, A, and C, that's our chord 1, that's F major. Chord 2 is a G minor. Notice because I've got a B flat in there, not a B, to stay with the scale. Chord 3 is A minor. This one doesn't come up in the whole song apart from right at the very end. Here's chord 4. This is a B flat major. Chord 5, C major. Chord 6 is a D minor. And chord 7 is an E diminished. Now this one doesn't come up at all, but it's the 7th chord of the scale, just so you know. So we've got 7 chords there to look at, and pretty much everything that you're going to see in this chord chart here is going to fall in to that grouping. There's only one slight deviation from it much later on. So chord 1, chord 2, chord 3, chord 4, chord 5, chord 6, chord 7, back to chord 1. Right. Now the first thing I want to do is have a look at what I'm calling the main chord sequence. It's not actually the first chord sequence you hear in the song, but it's probably the most important one, and one that a lot of the other chord sequences are kind of based on. So it's actually this chord sequence here. It's the one where the drums and the pads and everything kick in, and the bass most notably, in the actual song. So let's look at this chord sequence first. If you're in front of your piano, feel free to just like pause it when you want to kind of things to slow down, and then just resume when you've got the hang of it, because I'm just going to go through this as I normally would. So first chord is G minor, and that's made up of G, B flat, and D. This is chord 2 of the scale, by the way. So we're going from chord 2, G minor, and I'm just playing a G in the left hand just to kind of bolster the bottom note. Then we're going up to a B flat major. This is our chord 4. Then down to our chord 1, F major, and chord 5, which is C major. So notice I'm always kind of copying whatever the root note of the chord is with a single bass note in my left hand. That's just to keep things nice and simple for now. You can do so much more with it later on, but this is just for illustrative purposes. All right, so G minor to B flat to F major to C. Okay, that's taking us on a sequence of 2, 4, 1, 5. Now, for the sake of learning something other than just how the song is put together, let's have a little look at inversions, because it's something that I'm going to be using a lot while I explain this. So let's talk about inversions for a second. This first chord we're playing is G minor. It's made up of a G, a B flat, and a D. Now the next chord that we're about to go to is a B flat major. That's made up of B flat, D, and F. So let me just show you those. G, B flat, and D. That's our G minor chord. When I'm going to go to the B flat chord, I'm going to need a B flat, a D, and an F on the top. So there's a more sensible way of moving this chord over to here, and that is to just keep the B flat and the D where they are, and then move this G down here to an F, and we're now playing a B flat chord just in a slightly different way. This is called a second inversion, what we've got here. So we've got F, B flat, and D. So I can move from the first chord to the next one much more gracefully and much more kind of interestingly and musically from one to the other. So I'm going to keep the bass notes that I had. I'm going to go from a G and then to a B flat while I change to that chord. Now the next chord is an F. I'm actually already playing an F at the bottom of this chord, so I'm just going to move this B flat note here down one to A, and this D down to C, and then now I'm magically playing an F chord. So match the bass note at the bottom. Okay, and then to actually move the minimal amount of space, I would then move these two notes down here to make a first inversion of C, like that. But I'm actually going to use a slightly higher up one because this puts me back in a position to reach my G minor a little bit more comfortably. So from there to there. So these are the inversions, and this is the way I'm going to be playing it mostly. G minor like this, B flat major like this, F major this way, and C major this way, and then I'm back to my first one. So before you do anything, spend a whole bunch of time just going around this chord sequence and get comfortable with it. It's not quite enough to just know which chords you're going to. It's to kind of like develop a little bit of muscle memory of going from one to the other and sort of, yeah, just feeling really comfortable moving from like that. Okay, so this is the main chord sequence. A lot of the other ones are kind of like variations on this, and this is the chord sequence you're going to be playing pretty much whenever they're singing para, para, paradise. Okay, so it's the main bit. Okay, next let's look at these chords in the verse. Don't worry, by the way, these chords in the rest of the intro I am going to come back to, but there's a better approach in the way of ordering this. So let's have a look at these verse chords. We've got 4 lines, but actually the chords are going to repeat twice, and it's going to do the exact same thing. So we've got a D minor to a B flat to an F to a C. And then if you look at the next section, it's going to do that exact same thing again. So I would think of it more as, okay, we're doing chord 6, chord 4, chord 1, chord 5, which, by the way, is a variation of the 2, 4, 1, 5 from the previous sequence. It's a 6, 4, 1, 5 played twice round before you go to what we're going to consider the chorus in a minute. So D minor, D, F, and A. You can play it there, like A, D, F, and then put your D in the bass. But it's up to you how you play this. I'm personally playing it with this inversion to make it nice and easy to get to my B flat, F and C that I was using before. But you could easily play the D minor like this, F, A, D, and then just put the D in the bass with your left hand. So either way, and this is your verse part. So there's gonna be some vocals over this. So we've got the when she was just a girl, she expected the world, but it flew away from her reach, so she ran away in her sleep. And then it's going to move on to the familiar chord sequence we were just using. So again, we've just finished looking at that verse section. Go over it loads of times. If you have to, if you're following along with me right now, pause the video, spend a bit of time just going around that chord sequence and get used to it. However you want to play it. You don't have to use the inversions I used. Just play it however. Okay, the next section that we're looking at is actually going to be more of the verse, but it's going to use the chorus material. So at this point, I just want to explain that this is actually a relatively complicated pop song. Hell of a lot of pop songs just use the most basic chord sequence, and they might even keep that same chord sequence for the chorus and for the entire song. Case in point, the song With or Without You by U2 is the same chord sequence for the entire thing. And they make the verses feel different from the choruses and so on by changing the structure of like how many instruments are playing and what type of part is being played. But the chord sequence stays exactly the same. With this one, there's actually a hell of a lot of stuff going on, and a lot of it is classic Coldplay. And I'm actually going to do a video on some of the techniques, the songwriting techniques that Chris Martin uses, because some of them are quite fascinating and they recur a lot throughout the Coldplay catalogue, so you can kind of really map out how they've developed, which is pretty cool. So this chorus bit here is actually the same material that we used earlier, so the G minor to the B flat, the F to the C, and although this isn't kind of the big kick-ass chorus that you're kind of waiting for, it is actually really just a sort of a low-grade chorus. So he does sing it. He's going, dream to paradise, 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 every time she closed her eyes. And then it just does that chord sequence round a bit more with no vocals in. So you just keep... Another one. So you already know this section from the intro, from the very first chord sequence that we tackled. All right, so next we're going to have a look at the second verse. Now this is where things get a little bit tricky, and actually some of the little signature Coldplay stuff comes in. So this new sequence is going to go as follows. B flat to the next chord, F over A. Now, let me just take a minute to explain what the hell that means, if you haven't come across it before. It kind of looks like it's saying, okay, on one side of the slash is F, and on the other side is A. So on the left side of the slash, we've got an F, so you put an F in your left hand, and you play an A with your right hand, and you get this. Now, that's actually incorrect, but that's the way that I intuitively would have thought it worked before I understood it. So the best way I got my head around it was to think, okay, so let's say you're writing a text to someone and you say, see you in half an hour. Okay, we've written 1/2 to kind of represent a half, 1/2. We don't mean I'll see you in 1/2 hours, we say half an hour. So we're kind of like at a loss because we don't have maybe one of those little symbols that actually puts the 1 above the 2. And when you do this with your chords, you're kind of suggesting, okay, it's the F over the A, not F on one side of the slash and A on the other. So you're thinking, I'm playing an F, that's the main chord, but I'm playing it on top of the bass note of an A. So this is actually what you're getting. Oops, when I don't mash the keys wrong. So F major over an A. Okay? So we're going from B flat to F over A. And then it gives you an F over A again to C. Now this is what I mean by one of the classic Coldplay techniques. They're doing this thing where basically you've got 4 spaces for chords. Let's say we've got 4 blocks for chords like this. And I'm going to do B flat in the first one, then F over A, then F over A again, and then C. Now, if you weren't paying attention, you might just write that down as B flat, then F over A, then C. But then you're not really taking into account that the F over A chord is being played for twice as long. So you're occupying 4 kind of like chord spaces, and the 2 middle ones are actually the same chord. So We've seen this before in clocks. Yeah, that's it. So the first chord is in E flat major, then it goes to a B flat minor, holds the B flat minor, and then to an F minor. Now, the only reason I bring this up is it's actually, weirdly, it's quite a rare thing to do, to make the two middle chords of a sequence the same thing, and I only really see it happening in Coldplay songs. I think there's two other songs where I can think of where it does that. It's relatively rare, but it's a really interesting songwriting technique, and yeah, not many people use it. It's kind of weird. So anyway, back to the sequence. We've got B flat, F over A, F over A, C. And now if you can imagine taking that sequence, copying it and paste it, we do it again, but we're just going to swap out those F over A chords for D minor chords. And again, here we go again with another Coldplay sort of old trick, is we're replacing chords that are kind of similar. It's a substitution. So we're going with the B flat at the start, and then this chord here, which is F over A, is being replaced with this one, a D minor. Now actually there's some shared notes here. So F would be these notes, A, C and F, and the D minor is A, D and F. So it's 66% the same chord. It's 2/3 the same thing, really. So you can take an example of a bunch of chords and then swap one of them out for another chord that's kind of using a lot of the same notes, and it will almost always work. And it's really cool to do that as like a second time round, to just make the chords feel a little bit more fresh. So yeah, we've got B flat down to F over A, F over A to C. Then it's going to do it again, B flat, but to D minor this time, then the D minor again to C. So you've got like, the harmonic movement feels kind of the same. It's got the same sort of push and pull as the other one, but it's just got a little element of something sort of fresh on top to keep it interesting. So I love that. It's a really great songwriting technique. So observe that and play it and sort of really notice that little difference that they've done there. It's great. Okay, then it's going to move on to the second half of this verse, which again borrows from the chorus. It's going to be pretty much the same as the Dreamed a paradise, only he sings a slightly different vocal line over the top, but it's the same chords. So life goes on, it gets so heavy, it breaks the butterfly, and you expect another sort of similar grouping of phrases afterwards, but he kind of does like half a verse next, and then it gets cut short really quick. So it starts with the first two chords, every tear a waterfall, and then it just jumps into a pre-chorus. So I like to group this as kind of like I don't know, it's like a verse and a half, or like a verse and a quarter or something, a verse and a bit. So this section here is kind of like an added on piece. So life goes on, it gets so heavy, it breaks the butterfly. That's one. Next one. Every year waterfall, and then it's cut off there to jump into this next section, which I'm calling a pre-chorus, but it's quite hard to label this song. It's got a lot of different components. Let's have a look at this section here. This is a new bit we haven't seen yet, but it is actually in the intro, so it is going to be handy earlier on too. So here we go. We're going to go B flat to F to C. So over the top of this, he's singing, in the night, the stormy night, she closed her eyes. And then pretty much the same thing again. In the night, the stormy night, away she flied. And that sets us up for the big chorus this time. So the one we've kind of been waiting for since the start of the song. And here we go. This is it here. The main chord sequence that we started off with. Dreamed a paradise, paradise, paradise. Oh, So yeah, the first time they go through that chorus, the vocal's doing da 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 da. Second time it does that which follows the line that it took in the first verse. So that's the first big chorus. You go 2 times around doing the exact same chord sequence, but the vocal just changes a little bit over the top. This is where it's going to go to a new section here, and this is another one from the intro. So we're going G minor to C, D minor to F. So again, this would be chord 2, then 5, 6, then 1, 2 to 5, 6, and 1. On bass note 1. And this is going to go around 4 times while the track is kind of like building at this point. And then it's going to drop another one of these little pre-choruses on you. It's still lying underneath the stormy skies. And she said, oh, I know the sun's set to rise. Another big chorus coming. Here we go. And dreamed of paradise, paradise, paradise. Oh, paradise, paradise, paradise. Oh. And then it's just going to go round that sequence a whole bunch of times before the song sort of gets to this outro portion here. Now, again, I'm just going to stress the fact that I'm not playing exactly what Chris Martin would have played on the recording, or whoever, if they got a session piano player in or whatever. I'm not playing exactly what you're hearing. I'm listening to the chords and the movement around the diatonic and saying, okay, he's playing this chord, then this chord, then this chord. He might be doing certain versions of it and little decorations over the top. But I'm just kind of like noticing which chords are being played and how the harmony is sort of like being represented. So anyway, at the outro here, there's a bar of the B flat, a bar of F over A. We saw this in the verse earlier. Then A minor, then a D minor. Sorry, wrong bass notes. Interestingly, that A minor, that's our chord 3 of this scale, and we haven't seen this like for the whole song. It's the first time we hear our chord 3. So yeah, let me go to the start again. B flat, F over A, chord 3, which is A minor, chord 6, which is D minor. And then we're going to go G, then it holds G again. And this G, which is a major by the way, is our first non-diatonic chord. So it almost feels like the song has just changed key right at the end, right before it's faded out, which is kind of interesting. And then it lets you have that chord 1 again. This chord 4 again, the B flat. Just to remind you that we're all about the B flats, not the Bs really. That was just a bit of a, that was just us pulling your leg for a second. And then it's back to the key there. So it's a fun little outro there that feels a little bit modal, kind of interesting. So that outro would be, yeah, and yeah, there is a melody that he's kind of playing over the top there. But I'm less interested in that right now and more interested in how the song works. We're taking it apart like a clock radio and just looking at all the pieces and going, oh, okay, that fits to that one, that goes to that one. And that's kind of a much more useful and applicable understanding of music than necessarily saying, oh, I can play that song exactly as it is on the record. That's useful too, for sure. I mean, not putting it down at all, but just, yeah. There's kind of 2 ways of looking at it, and this is the one that I normally choose for just understanding music in general. So let's just do a quick recap of this and go over it, because I skipped over these first 2 chord sequences in the intro because we covered them elsewhere, and this this beginning bit is actually almost like a mini overture. And that is to say, it's like a little patchwork of some of the chord sequences that are to come later in the song. It's like, oh, okay, we'll start off with like 3 run rounds of the middle 8 chord sequence. Then we'll do 2 little pre-choruses, then a big chorus section that's just going to be instrumental. Then we'll get started with sort of telling the story and beginning the song. So yeah, it's interesting. It's like what I was taught an overture should do in classical music. So this first chord sequence, we've got the G minor to the C, D minor to F. And if you remember the track, that's actually kind of a, it's like a tremolo string, very quick da-da-da-da-da-da-da sort of sound that's doing this bit. So G minor to C, D minor to F. I'm just loving all my second inversions at the moment. Can be played in any inversion anyway, really. I'm just sort of showing you what it looks like. In fact, let me do a root position one of all of these so you can really see it. G minor, C, D minor, F. So that's how it's moving. Okay, so it does that 3 times, and then it does a little bit of this pre-chorus idea, sort of. So B flat. I'll do these root position again, to F, and then C over E, which is interesting. So remember that what I was just talking about earlier with F over A, this is kind of the same thing. It's a C major chord, but it's on top of an E bass note, so we call it C/E, or C over E, which is kind of more correct in terms of terminology. So yeah, B flat, F, C over E, and this is over the that violin phrase, and then it kicks in. Yeah, with that section, and the bass line does this ba-da-dum, ba-da-bum, ba-ba-bum, ba-da-dum kind of idea, where those are passing notes going between the roots. So the root is G to start off with, but the bass kind of goes, hey look, I'm here first before everything else kicks in, and goes B flat, A, G, ba-ba-bum, and then everyone comes in on that G. But the bass was just kind of saying, hey look, I'm going to lead into that first. And then it leads to the next chord as well, this B flat. Ba-da-dum, ba-ba-bum, ba-ba-bum, ba-ba-bum. So it's going to kind of like just be doing these, what we call passing notes on the way from one chord to the other. You can kind of use any notes you like from the key. So choose any of those to kind of play with on your way to the next root note. Implementing these into your playing sort of while you're trying to get used to the chords can be a little bit of an overload. So I would suggest just doing really simple bass lines for a while and getting the chords right. When you're feeling really confident with the right hand, that you can go to any chord and sort of just understand it. And bear in mind, this isn't instant. This takes a really long time. So lots and lots of practice, lots of small practice sessions. You can start kind of introducing some more kind of like walking bass lines, the bass being a bit more interesting. You can also start to, let's say we're doing the G minor here. You can kind of duplicate the bass line in sort of octaves with the left hand. This is a really standard pop music thing to do as a piano player, is to sort of treat the right hand like a guitarist and the left hand like a bass player, and the left hand is just kind of doing octaves of what the bass player would be doing, and the right hand is just kind of like mashing chords. And that's like a really sort of very, very standard way of making your way through pop piano parts, is to just play the bass on the left and chords on the right. It's actually quite instructive as well to really understand what's happening, because it's the two fundamental parts of what makes the harmony. What's the bass doing and what chords are being represented. So after you've done that sequence, and we go to verse 1. So remember, it's this chord 6, 4, then 1, 5. When she was just a girl, she expected the world. And again, so she ran away in sleep. And then this sort of like low down, chilled out chorus, dreamed of paradise, paradise. Okay, and then round again. This is just instrumental, this bit, so I'm doing this bit at the moment. Down to F and then to C. Time for verse 2 where it gets a bit more crazy. B flat, A of F, F of A, then to C. Same thing again, but switch out those F over A chords for D minors. Then we're going to borrow these chorus chords again, like the main riff I was talking about, to do this section here. Life goes on, it's so heavy, it breaks the butterfly. And then a sort of miniature version that's going to get cut off. Every tear, waterfall, and then straight into this pre-chorus. So the pre-chorus. In the night, the stormy night, she closed her eyes. In the night, the stormy night, away she flied. To the main chorus, the real gut punch one, that kind of where all is the loudest part of the song, where everything's coming in. Dreamed of paradise, paradise, paradise. Oh, paradise, paradise, paradise. Oh. Then we're straight into the middle 8 section, which is another bit borrowed from the verse again. G minor to C, D to F. While the whole band is building at this point, getting bigger and bigger. And then it sort of like drops down again to this section. The stormy skies. She said, oh, I know there's sunset to rise. Next big fat chorus, and dreamed of paradise, 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 paradise. Paradise, paradise, paradise. Oh. Keep going with that chord sequence. G minor, B flat, F, C. Alright, and then the outro being this bit here with that big falling section here. The chords, the more important bit is that it's going B flat, F over A minor, D minor, and G, and then back to B flat for that nice kind of strange modal feel at the end there. So that is the complete breakdown of all the chords and everything that's happening there. There's so much to analyze with this stuff. We could talk about the production, we could talk about the melody and the notes that he chose to sing and the way that that's harmonized in the backing vocals. There's just like an endless goldmine here of things to talk about and things to enjoy. But for today, I just wanted to go over like how the chords are put together and how they work. And also how the structure sort of manifests throughout the song, because this is a complicated structure. For a pop song, this is quite tricky. So yeah, it's worth going over that just lots and lots of times. Like I said, get used to the chord sequence, play it all over, and yeah, see how you go. Okay, I'm going to cut it off there. Thank you so much for watching, especially if you made it all the way to the end. I'm hoping to do some more of these. If you have a song that you would like to suggest that I go through and analyze in a similar way to this, please let me know in the comments, or please drop me an email. I'd love to start doing these slightly more on the regular. So yeah, let's see what happens and see what everybody wants. Anyway, thank you so much, and see you soon.